Welcome, the anointed ones. There are moments in life when your name enters a room before you do, and not every room is lit by God. That's where this story begins, not with drama, not with exaggeration, but with a reality most people will never admit out loud. Some individuals are so spiritually charged that even their photograph can trigger a reaction in realms they've never visited. And the wildest part? The people who handed your picture over weren't expecting a reaction at all. They just wanted answers, results, confirmation, or maybe a little chaos. Instead, they got a response that left them confused, terrified, and pretending everything was normal while their souls were doing backflips. Here's a fact that should unsettle anyone who has ever underestimated a chosen one. In spiritual studies across multiple cultures, a person's image is considered an extension of their energy field, a doorway into their essence. Meaning, when someone hands your picture to a dark force, they're not just sharing pixels, they're sharing access. They thought they were conducting a little spiritual experiment. What they didn't understand is that chosen ones come with encrypted energy, not password protected, heaven protected. And the devil read your file and said, "Nope, return to sender." See, people assume darkness is always eager, always ready, always hungry. But darkness is intelligent, strategically so. And when your photo showed up, it wasn't met with interest. It was met with hesitation. It was met with recognition. It was met with the spiritual version of a side eye. Because even the devil knows when messing with someone will backfire instantly. Imagine a force known for destruction taking one look at your picture and choosing self-preservation. That's how layered you are. And let's be honest, if you ever wanted proof that you are built differently, this is it. There are folks still trying to understand why the negativity they sent didn't land, why the spell didn't stick, why their consultation turned into spiritual chaos for them instead of for you. Meanwhile, you're out here drinking water, minding your business, and wondering why people keep acting weird around you. They know something, or better yet, they saw something that they'll never confess. Tonight, we're going deep into what actually happened when they handed your photo to a devil, and why what the devil did next shook them harder than anything they've tried to do to you. Number 1. The devil recognized the mark on your spirit before they understood it themselves. People around you always assumed you were just another person walking through life, dealing with the same struggles and carrying the same weaknesses as everyone else. They never considered that you had a spiritual identity that existed long before any of them formed opinions about you. When they handed your photo to a dark force, they expected a simple reaction. They thought evil would welcome the opportunity, jump at the chance, and go straight to work. Instead, something very different happened, something they weren't prepared to face. The devil didn't react to your image the way he reacts to most people. He paused. He hesitated. He recognized something about you that they never took the time to understand. Your spirit has a signature that cannot be erased or diluted. You carry a mark that was placed on you before life tried to break you, before people tried to reject you, before circumstances tried to reduce you. Darkness does not need introductions to know who is untouchable. Your name carries weight, but not in the earthly way people measure influence. It carries weight in the spiritual realm, where identity is not determined by status, money, or appearance, but by alignment, purpose, and resilience. Even when you didn't know your own strength, the realm of darkness knew it. That's why certain people reacted strangely to you. That's why you triggered others without speaking. That's why envy showed up before success did. When your photo was handed over, darkness didn't see a face. It saw rank. It saw someone who had survived attacks meant to destroy them. It saw someone who had been dragged through emotional storms and still didn't lose themselves. It saw someone who carried wounds that should have produced bitterness, but instead produced depth, wisdom, clarity, and intuition. Darkness knows the difference between someone pretending to be strong and someone who became strong by force. That difference is everything. The devil recognized a protected soul, a marked soul, a soul carrying purpose. The ones who tried to use darkness against you couldn't understand why nothing went through. But spiritual realms did. Darkness stepped back because in that moment it understood what they refused to believe. You were never theirs to touch. Number 2, the devil saw the damage you would do to his kingdom if you ever rose fully. When they handed your photo over, they assumed they were taking control. They assumed that darkness would handle you, bend you, or manipulate your energy the way it manipulates others. What they didn't know is that darkness doesn't just react to what you are now. It calculates what you will become. The devil doesn't waste time on someone who poses no long-term threat. But when your image entered that space, the reaction wasn't casual interest. It was a recognition of a threat so serious it couldn't be ignored. Darkness saw the ripple effect of the life you were destined to live, the people you were meant to influence, and the strongholds you were going to dismantle. It saw a future that was terrifying to forces that thrive on stagnation, deception, and control. You've survived things that should have broken you, endured betrayals that should have destroyed your faith, and walked through storms that would have crushed anyone else. But each survival added to your spiritual weight. Each wound became a weapon. Each lesson learned became armor. That accumulation of strength wasn't visible to the human eye, but the spiritual realm could sense it immediately. Darkness calculated the potential of a person like you, a person who, when fully activated, wouldn't just withstand attacks, but would actively disrupt the patterns that evil relies on. That's why it hesitated. That's why your image didn't trigger the chaos they expected. The devil saw someone who could influence generations, someone who could expose lies, dismantle deception, and inspire transformation without even trying. He saw the power of your future self reflected in a single moment, in a single image, and recognized the danger. What they intended as an attempt to harm you became a mirror showing the strength, resilience, and destiny they could not touch. They wanted damage, but darkness revealed that the only real destruction would be theirs if they continued down this path. You weren't just untouchable. You were untouchable in ways they couldn't even comprehend, and that realization alone shocked them more than anything they could have imagined. Number 3, your light exposed. Their intentions before they could even execute them. They believed they were clever. They thought they could manipulate forces, hide motives, and engineer results without consequence. They didn't account for the fact that your energy operates on a frequency that reveals what others are trying to conceal. Your light doesn't need words. It doesn't need announcements. It simply exists, and in its existence, it exposes everything that's hidden, everything that's dishonest, and everything that's calculated against you. When your photo reached darkness, it didn't spark an attack. It illuminated the intention behind the attack. What they tried to hide, what they hoped would remain secret, became obvious immediately. Their plan, their focus, their timing, all of it was revealed to forces far beyond their understanding and far beyond their control. People underestimate how dangerous clarity can be. Darkness prefers confusion because confusion makes people easy to manipulate. But you were never easy. Your presence, even in an image, radiates clarity and awareness. This clarity doesn't just protect you. It exposes the truth of anyone attempting to interfere with you. It unmasks their fear, their envy, and their desperation. In trying to use darkness as a tool against you, they only highlighted their own weakness. Their motives were laid bare, and their strategy crumbled before it even began. You've been walking around with a light that doesn't need validation, a light that shines without intention and yet reveals everything around it. Darkness recognizes it, not because it's impressed, but because it respects the boundaries it cannot cross. The moment they tried to weaponize your photo, the intended attack turned inward. Their hidden agendas were exposed, their secrets became visible, and their confidence shattered. You didn't have to act. You didn't have to intervene. Your mere presence, your spiritual signature, your essence, revealed what they didn't even realize they were hiding. By the time they processed what had happened, it was too late. Their intentions were already exposed, their plans already failing, and the only thing left was their shock at realizing that you had been untouchable all along. Your light doesn't just protect you. It unmasks everyone who dares to target you, and that revelation alone leaves them stunned. Number 4. The devil couldn't touch you because your suffering already paid the price they were hoping to demand. They thought they were coming after someone vulnerable. They thought that pain could still bend you, break you, or make you compromise. They didn't realize that the suffering you've already endured was a shield, a payment made in full long before they ever arrived. Every betrayal, every loss, every sleepless night, every disappointment, all of it contributed to a spiritual account that they cannot drain. They tried to attack a soul that had already walked through the fire, and in doing so, they encountered a force they weren't prepared for. A spirit that doesn't negotiate with darkness because the price has already been paid. Pain is a universal teacher, but few people truly understand its purpose. You lived through experiences that should have left you bitter or broken, yet you came out whole, stronger and wiser. The devil studies suffering because it knows where people are weak, where they can be manipulated, and where cracks can be exploited. But when it examined you, it found only reinforced walls. The wounds you survived weren't empty scars. They were fortified gates that no darkness could pass. Every attack intended to exploit you bounced back because you had already absorbed the cost, already learned the lesson, already transformed the energy into something untouchable. They underestimated the fact that resilience isn't something you suddenly acquire when attacked. Resilience is built through repetition, through enduring what others cannot, through surviving when every door closes and every person turns away. You had been paying for your strength before they even tried to take it, and that payment ensured that darkness could not enforce a debt that no longer existed. By the time they realized what had happened, it was too late. Their strategy, their manipulation, their hope of breaking you crumbled because your history of survival had already created a spiritual immunity. You are untouchable, not by chance, not by luck, but because life itself, with all its harsh lessons and relentless pressure, had already prepared you for the very moment they thought they could control. Your suffering was never wasted. It was armor, and they learned that the hard way. Number 5, they tried to weaponize your image, not realizing you are spiritually armored. They believed that a photo is just a photo. They believed it could be manipulated, cursed, or used as a conduit for harm. What they didn't understand is that you are not vulnerable in the way ordinary people are. You are spiritually armored. Your energy, your essence, your very presence carries protections that operate independently of your awareness. Darkness can try all it wants, but it encounters a wall that it cannot climb, a shield it cannot penetrate, and a system it cannot hack. What they intended as a tool against you ended up revealing their own ignorance, because they were dealing with someone whose spiritual defenses are naturally integrated into everything you are. The armor you carry is not flashy or aggressive. It doesn't scream, it doesn't draw attention. That's why they thought they had an advantage. Armor like yours is subtle but absolute. It's forged through the trials, betrayals, and challenges you've survived. Every attempt to harm you only strengthens it further, because the attacks activate layers they cannot see or understand. The moment they tried to manipulate your image, the armor did its work. Their efforts were neutralized before they even fully formed, and their panic began quietly but unmistakably. They realized too late that the person they were targeting had defenses far beyond their calculations. This is why chosen ones are rarely easy targets. Ordinary energy can be tampered with, ordinary strength can be overwhelmed, ordinary will can be bent. But your spiritual armor doesn't rely on temporary force or fleeting courage. It's woven from resilience, reinforced by experience, and maintained by a destiny that darkness cannot interfere with. Every attempt to use your image as a weapon ended in failure because the attack had to pass through you first, and there was nothing for it to penetrate. By the time they understood, it was too late. Their strategies, their rituals, their plans were powerless against someone who is inherently protected. They thought they were sending chaos toward you, but the armor you carry made their efforts meaningless. You weren't just untouchable, you were untouchable in ways they couldn't even recognize, and that realization left them shocked, frustrated, and completely unprepared for the reality of who you are. Number 6. The devil realized you don't break the usual way, and that scared him. Most people fall apart under pressure. Most people crack when betrayal hits, when dreams collapse, or when life delivers blow after blow. That's how darkness measures strength, by watching where people break, bend, or compromise. But you don't break the usual way. You bend, yes, but you never snap. You get knocked down, but you get back up with a clarity and determination that confuses anyone watching, including the spiritual realm. The devil studies patterns. He knows the typical sequence of human weakness, the ways people collapse, the predictable reactions to pain and fear. When it came to you, none of the usual patterns applied, and that unpredictability, it terrifies him. Your life has been a series of trials that would have destroyed ordinary souls, but you survived without losing yourself. You endured betrayal, loss, humiliation, and attacks that should have shattered your confidence and your spirit. Most people would carry bitterness or rage, but your resilience didn't manifest as anger. It manifested as quiet authority, as a depth of understanding, as strength that doesn't need to prove itself. Darkness recognizes the difference between someone pretending to be strong and someone who became strong because they had no choice. The devil saw someone who could withstand psychological, emotional, and spiritual attacks without cracking. That alone made your image a signal of danger rather than opportunity. This is why their attempts failed before they began. They tried to use darkness against you, thinking it would manipulate or control, and they underestimated the way your spirit responds to adversity. You don't fold under pressure. You don't react predictably. You don't allow pain to dictate your next move. That kind of endurance is rare, and it interrupts the normal operations of forces that depend on fear, doubt, and weakness to function. By the time they realized what was happening, the shock had already set in. Their strategies didn't just fail, they revealed their own vulnerabilities. The devil doesn't fight blindly. He recognized that touching someone who doesn't break the usual way could backfire in ways he didn't want to risk. That's why your strength wasn't just defensive. It was a deterrent, a warning, and a revelation all at once. And that terrified them more than anything they could have imagined. Number 7. Your name triggered a spiritual warning that they didn't expect. Names are more than just labels. They carry identity, energy, and resonance. When they handed your photo over, they thought they were dealing with a person, someone they could manipulate, control, or influence. What they didn't know is that your name alone triggers a warning in spiritual realms, a signal that something is protected, something is sacred, and something is untouchable. Darkness doesn't operate blindly. It registers names, histories, and purposes, and it knows which ones are off limits. When your identity entered the space they tried to exploit, alarms went off, not audible, not visible, but deeply felt in the spiritual fabric of things. What they thought was a harmless attempt became a red flag waving in front of forces far beyond their comprehension. The reason their plan failed isn't luck, it's law. Spiritual law is precise and absolute. It doesn't bend because someone is desperate, clever, or obsessed. Your name has a signature, a frequency that carries your purpose, your protection, and your alignment. When it was exposed to darkness, the forces that respond to such signals immediately recognized the boundaries around you. Their intentions were blocked not because you intervened consciously, but because your identity itself was a warning system. Anyone trying to cross that line would trigger consequences automatically. Their miscalculation wasn't just human error. It was a spiritual misstep that backfired in ways they could never control. This is why certain attacks against chosen ones fail before they even begin. Your protection isn't random or conditional. It's embedded into who you are, into the very energy that flows through you. Your name alone is enough to alert forces that something beyond comprehension is happening, that someone is off limits. They didn't expect that darkness recognizes authority and alignment, and when it did, it paused. They wanted to manipulate, but instead they were the ones checked, stopped, and confronted with their own limits. By the time they processed what had happened, it was clear. Their attempt to control or harm you had triggered a warning they couldn't ignore. Your identity, your name, and your essence were more powerful than their schemes, and their shock came from realizing that some people simply exist in a space darkness cannot touch, no matter how much effort or intent is directed at them. Number 8. Their intention turned into their own exposure. Because your destiny is partially self-defending. They believed they were in control. They thought they could send darkness your way, manipulate forces, and bend circumstances to their will. What they didn't understand is that your destiny has a built-in defense system. It's not magic, it's not a gimmick, it's a law of alignment. When anyone tries to interfere with your path, their intentions are reflected back, their strategies exposed, and their weaknesses revealed. They wanted to target you, but in doing so, they exposed themselves. Every move they made against you became a roadmap of their envy, their fear, and their desperation. Their actions were no longer secret. They were mirrored for the universe and for every spiritual entity watching. A chosen one doesn't need to fight every battle. Their very existence, their alignment, and the energy of their destiny protect them automatically. Darkness can't manipulate someone whose life is already fortified with purpose. It can attempt, it can probe, but it cannot bypass the intrinsic defenses embedded in the soul. That's why every effort they made to harm you, every ritual, every manipulation, every plan, didn't just fail. It bounced back and highlighted who they really are. They didn't just miscalculate your strength. They miscalculated the consequences of touching someone whose path is actively guarded by forces beyond their comprehension. Your destiny isn't passive. It reacts, corrects, and redirects energy aimed at you in ways that protect, but also reveal. When they tried to attack, it wasn't you who exposed them. It was the natural law embedded in your existence. Their intent, which they thought was hidden, became obvious. Their envy became visible. Their fear became apparent. And when the realization hit them, it wasn't subtle. It was a shockwave of understanding that the one they targeted had protections they couldn't see, couldn't bypass, and couldn't influence. By the time they processed what happened, they were left staring at their own reflection in a harsh and undeniable light. Their plan, their intentions, and their strategy had been dismantled before it even touched you, leaving them shocked, frustrated, and humiliated. Your destiny isn't just a path. It's a self-defending system that ensures anyone trying to interfere ends up exposing themselves instead of you. Number 9. The devil didn't attack you because he was busy attacking them for trying you. They thought darkness was their tool, something they could control, manipulate, or direct against you without consequence. They believed that handing over your photo would summon power they could command, that they were calling a storm without being affected themselves. What they didn't realize is that darkness doesn't operate under human assumptions. It isn't loyal to anyone who miscalculates, and it doesn't waste energy where it isn't needed. When they tried to target you, the forces they tried to use against you turned on them instead. The devil didn't attack you because he recognized that you were untouchable, but he also recognized something else. Anyone foolish enough to try to interfere with you was now a liability, a target, and a source of spiritual correction. This is how they learned the hard way that darkness has rules and boundaries, and that it punishes misuse more than it punishes the untouchable. They thought they were attacking, but the attack never reached you. Instead, it circled back, revealing their weaknesses, their miscalculations, and their lack of spiritual awareness. Every move they made, every attempt to manipulate forces, was redirected to expose them, to remind them that energy moves in ways humans rarely understand. They were the ones shaken, the ones unsettled, the ones forced to confront consequences they never anticipated. You, on the other hand, were completely untouched. You remained in your normal flow, calm and unaffected, while the ones who tried to use darkness for their selfish goals began to experience the very chaos they hoped to send your way. Your protection isn't about doing anything heroic. It's about alignment, about a natural order in which your life, your energy, and your purpose are safeguarded automatically. The more they tried to push, the harder the consequences fell back on them, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. By the time they realized what happened, panic had set in. They were witnessing firsthand how trying to manipulate a chosen one can backfire catastrophically. The devil didn't attack you because there was no need. Your armor, your resilience, and your alignment made you untouchable. But he had no choice but to remind them that anyone foolish enough to interfere with your life risks becoming the target themselves. Number 10. Their curiosity about your strength became the reason they lost control of their own. They were obsessed with understanding you. They wanted to dissect your strength, measure your influence, and figure out why you seemed untouchable. They approached your life like a puzzle they could solve, a problem they could manipulate. What they didn't realize is that their curiosity itself carried consequences. Your strength isn't something that can be analyzed safely. It doesn't bend to observation or inquiry. The more they probed, the more their own stability began to unravel. Darkness, when misused, doesn't simply serve. It teaches lessons, often through reflection. And in trying to study or manipulate you, they triggered a reflection that turned their focus inward. Their obsession became their undoing. They wanted secrets, but what they got was exposure. Every attempt to probe your energy, to understand why you survived, why you remained unshaken, or why you carried an aura of authority, ended up reflecting their vulnerabilities. They were forced to confront aspects of themselves they had ignored: insecurity, fear, and the limits of their control. Their attention on you didn't empower them, it destabilized them. The very act of watching, calculating, and attempting to predict your responses caused them to lose control over their own lives. The more they fixated, the more their energy weakened, their plans faltered, and their confidence eroded. You, meanwhile, moved as you always do, unbothered, steady, and entirely unaffected. Their attempts to study or manipulate you revealed more about their weaknesses than about your strength. Your power operates on principles that can't be understood through observation alone. It's lived, not analyzed. It's earned, not inherited. And anyone who tries to dissect it without wisdom finds themselves destabilized. By the time they realize the consequences of their curiosity, it was too late. They had already lost control over their own intentions, their own emotions, and their own strategies. They weren't just shocked. They were humbled, forced to recognize that some strength isn't meant to be understood, only respected. In trying to study you, they revealed their own limitations. And that is the cost of underestimating a chosen one whose energy defies ordinary understanding. Number 11. The devil saw you carry secrets. You don't even know yet. They thought they were targeting someone ordinary, someone whose life could be read, measured, and manipulated. They didn't realize that your existence is layered and that your power extends far beyond what is visible even to you. Darkness doesn't attack blindly. It assesses potential, measures influence, and recognizes what's dormant, waiting to awaken. When your photo was handed over, the devil didn't see a mere human being. He saw hidden layers, undiscovered abilities, and secrets you haven't even stepped into yet. These are aspects of yourself that are reserved for future moments, milestones you haven't reached, and authority you haven't claimed. That alone made any attempt to harm you risky, unnecessary, and, ultimately, impossible. Every chosen one carries aspects of themselves that are off-limits to both human and spiritual interference. You might not be fully aware of them yet, but your energy field reflects them, broadcasts them, and protects them. Darkness can sense this. When they tried to use you as a target, they inadvertently exposed themselves to the unseen dimensions of your identity, aspects of your purpose, your influence, and your potential that they cannot control, predict, or counteract. The devil recognized that touching you now would only provoke forces and capacities that are not yet active, and that such interference could backfire catastrophically. Your life is a constant unfolding of revelations, and that is what makes you untouchable. You carry depth that doesn't need validation, authority that doesn't require acknowledgement, and power that awakens at the right time. Any attempt to manipulate your energy, your essence, or even your image risks triggering outcomes that are not yet meant to be seen, but are already protected. By the time those who tried to harm you realized what was happening, they were already confronted with a truth they couldn't digest. You are far more than your present self. Darkness stepped back not out of mercy, but out of calculated caution. They understood that your current life is just a surface, and underneath lies potential and authority that they cannot challenge. Your secrets, even the ones you haven't discovered yet, act as a shield, and that realization alone left them stunned, exposed, and completely unprepared for the reality of who you are. Number 12. Your pain made you spiritually non-negotiable. They thought they could manipulate you, bend you, or coerce you into weakness, not realizing that your past suffering has already set you apart in ways they can't comprehend. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every loss you endured was more than just an experience. It was payment, preparation, and armor all at once. The pain you survived wasn't random. It fortified you, built walls they cannot climb, and created a foundation that no darkness can compromise. You are spiritually non-negotiable, not because you're naturally untouchable, but because life itself forced you to become untouchable. Ordinary people are easily influenced by fear, shame, or pressure, but you have already walked through storms that would break anyone else. Those storms left scars, yes, but they also left clarity, strength, and boundaries that can't be crossed. Darkness tries to exploit vulnerabilities, but when it came to you, there were none to exploit. Every attack that was meant to weaken you only confirmed that your spirit operates on a level beyond manipulation. You cannot be bribed with fear, swayed by lies, or coerced by threats. You've already paid the spiritual price they were hoping to demand, and that makes you untouchable in a way most people will never understand. The very fact that they tried to interfere revealed their misunderstanding of who you are. Your strength isn't superficial or performative. It's rooted in the fire you've walked through, the hardships you've survived, and the lessons you've absorbed. You don't negotiate with darkness because your life has already taught you the cost of compromise. Your boundaries are absolute, your energy is untouchable, and your purpose is unshakable. By the time they realized what happened, it was too late. Their attempts to control, harm, or manipulate you failed not because you were lucky, but because your pain made you immune to the very tactics they relied on. You are spiritually non-negotiable, and any attempt to alter that truth only exposes the ignorance and desperation of those who tried. Your suffering didn't weaken you. It made you untouchable, and that realization left them stunned, exposed, and completely powerless. Number 13. The devil realized touching. You would reignite a calling you've been trying to ignore. They thought they were in control. They believed that by involving darkness, they could manipulate, suppress, or derail you. What they didn't realize is that any attempt to interfere with a chosen one has consequences far beyond what humans can predict. Your life carries a purpose, a calling, and a mission that is already set in motion. Darkness cannot touch that. Without risking outcomes it cannot manage. When they handed your photo over, the devil recognized immediately that touching you would do more than harm. It would ignite parts of you you've been holding back, awaken potential you've been trying to ignore, and activate a force that would disrupt everything they thought they controlled. You've always carried responsibilities and talents that even you may not fully acknowledge. The world sees only fragments of your influence, but darkness sees the full spectrum, every capacity, every insight, every unclaimed authority. When they tried to bring harm, they inadvertently triggered a defensive mechanism woven into your destiny. The attack didn't reach you. Instead, it reflected the risk of awakening forces within you that had been lying dormant. Darkness recognizes when certain people are untouchable, not just because they are protected, but because their awakening would create consequences that are too disruptive, too unpredictable, and too powerful to risk. This is why attempts to manipulate you fail before they even begin. You may have been avoiding certain parts of your calling out of fear, hesitation, or timing, but any interference from darkness only accelerates the process. Your energy, your potential, and your alignment act like a trigger that forces activation in response to threat. The devil doesn't attack when the risk is too high, when the consequences would serve the one being targeted instead of the one attacking. That is exactly what happened with you. By the time they realized what occurred, the shock had set in. They were forced to witness the reality that trying to manipulate you would only strengthen and awaken you. The very thing they hoped to suppress was already untouchable and unstoppable. Their plan didn't just fail, it revealed the undeniable truth. Attempting to interfere with your path only fuels the calling you were destined to fulfill. Number 14. They wanted darkness to break you, but darkness ended up revealing who you truly are. They thought they were sending chaos toward you. They thought darkness could manipulate your life, cloud your judgment, or weaken your spirit. What they didn't understand is that darkness never attacks blindly. It responds to energy, identity, and alignment. When they handed over your photo, their intention was clear: harm, confusion, control. But what happened instead was a revelation. Darkness didn't break you. It reflected your strength, illuminated your resilience, and exposed the layers of your power they never recognized. Their plan backfired because they were targeting someone whose essence operates on a level they cannot touch or understand. Every attempt to harm you became a mirror, revealing your depth, your endurance, and your authority. They thought they could control outcomes, but the universe has a way of balancing intent. What they sent out to destroy you only highlighted what has always been true. You are unshakable, protected, and aligned with forces far beyond their reach. Darkness reacted not with destruction, but with recognition. It recognized that you are not an ordinary person. Your life, your energy, and your presence are woven together in ways that make interference futile and exposure inevitable. They failed because you are not defined by circumstances, attacks, or intentions aimed against you. You are defined by survival, by the lessons you've absorbed, and by the power that grows quietly, steadily, and invisibly within you. Every move they made, every attempt to manipulate you, ended up amplifying your presence rather than diminishing it. The very act of trying to use darkness as a weapon against you revealed that you are untouchable in ways they could never comprehend. By the time they processed what had happened, the shock was undeniable. They realized that they didn't just fail to break you, they unintentionally exposed your true self. Darkness, which they believed would serve their purposes, ended up doing exactly what they feared, revealing your strength, your protection, and the unshakable essence of a chosen one. Their shock was not just about failure. It was about understanding that some people are simply untouchable, and that your true power cannot be hidden, manipulated, or defeated. Conclusion. The truth is undeniable. They tried to use forces far beyond their comprehension to manipulate, harm, and control you. And yet every effort failed spectacularly. Every photograph they handed over, every plan they executed, every dark intention they nurtured was met not with vulnerability, but with resistance. You weren't just untouchable by chance. You were prepared by every experience, every trial, and every betrayal you survived. The devil didn't attack you because he recognized something most people never do. A chosen one's power is real, layered, and untouchable. Every attempt to interfere with your life didn't weaken you. It revealed your depth, your resilience, and the force of your destiny in ways that shocked them more than they expected. This is the reality of being chosen. Your strength cannot be measured by conventional standards, your protection cannot be bypassed by ordinary tactics, and your presence alone disrupts plans designed to control or destroy. Those who tried to manipulate darkness against you discovered too late that the forces they sought to command were aligned with your energy, not theirs. Every attack reflected back, exposing their intentions, their weaknesses, and their limitations. They thought they could harm you, but they ended up unveiling truths about themselves and the futility of trying to overpower someone who has already been fortified by life itself. Your life, your energy, and your destiny are woven together in a way that ensures you rise above attacks, reveal truth without effort, and remain untouchable even when the world tries to interfere. The universe and all forces within it recognize the difference between ordinary people and those who carry purpose, resilience, and alignment. Your story is not one of chance, but of design. It's a reminder that no attempt to harm a chosen one is ever simple. It always backfires, it always exposes, and it always highlights the untouchable nature of those destined for greatness. If this message resonated with you, and you felt the truth of these words, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay connected to content that unveils hidden realities. Like this video, share it with others who need to hear it, and leave a comment below with your thoughts or experiences. Your engagement helps spread this knowledge, strengthens your awareness, and reminds everyone watching that the untouchable power of a chosen one is not just a story. It's a reality that commands respect. God bless you.